I throw my heart over the bar and my body follows. Interesting. I throw my heart over the bar and my body follows. Now the question is, how can he not be a champion? See, winners don't do different things, they do things differently. See, this is called doing differently. It is the spirit, it is your conviction behind it, and that is the key. They do put in 200% in. No matter what they do, they always put in 200%. They are not fence sitters. They are not people saying, oh, I'll try. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it won't. Well, guaranteed it won't work. You started half-hearted, it will never work. So that means success is not absence of problems, it is overcoming problems. Success is not absence of failure, it is overcoming failure. It's not one, but many, many examples all over the world you will find the same thing. And prime clear example was recent that happened was Michael Phelps, who won 8 gold medals at Beijing.
Yes.
Now, broke a record 36 years of Mark Spitz, who won 7 gold medals in 1972. But people have heard of Michael Phelps. But how many people have heard that 2 years prior to the Olympics, he had fractured his hand? He had a fractured hand, and the doctor said to him, you cannot get into the water. And even if your hand does get fixed, will it have the same strength as it had before? You are competing not against your neighborhood kids, you are competing at the Olympics. And Michael Phelps said, I will get into the water. I won't use my hands, I will use my legs. He continued using his legs, and 2 years later, when he was at Beijing, he won 8 gold medals, and one of the events was 100 meters butterfly stroke. And guess, what was the difference between him and the person who came second? 1/100th of a second. 1/100th of a second. That was the difference. And it is attributed that when he had fractured his hand and he was practicing with his legs became so strong that gave him that added advantage. Look at this. Success is not absence of problems. It is overcoming problems. He had a problem. Yeah. And most people who have done anything in life, they all have overcome problems. And people who don't have to do anything in life, you give them everything, they will still not do it. And that's the difference.
And you're also known as a management guru. What role does a leader play in an organization and a country long-term stability?
I don't like this word called management guru. I don't like it. I would prefer to be called a management student. Interestingly, you see, one can only teach if you learn. And if I don't learn, I can never teach. So the whole thing is, a teacher's got to be the student. Otherwise, they can never teach. In fact, I'll share with you an example. One time, a young man graduated from MSc, and a man asked him, what are your qualifications? He said, I'm Master of Science. So they went to his professor and asked him, what are your qualifications? He said, I'm student of science. Interesting. The professor was a student of science, he was a Master of Science. What a difference it is. You know something, this is the attitude, and that is the key.
But to answer to my question, what role does a leader play in an organization, in a country's long-term stability?
In fact, any country, any family, any organization where you see it's messed up, look at the leader. If it is doing well, if it is succeeding, look at the leader. Because culture in any family, organization, country always goes top down, never bottom up. Always top down. You see, how can a supervisor enforce a no smoking policy when he's smoking himself in a no smoking area? It does not work. You see, how can an entrepreneur ask his people to be honest when he himself mistakes 5 cash books? It does not work. So culture anywhere always goes top down and never bottom up. And I'll share with you an example of Disney. 1 week a year, the Disney corporate office closes, and right from the top, CEO and everybody in the corporate office is working at the Disney park as attendants, parking ushers, selling janitors, selling tickets, whatever. Everybody is working 1 week a year. Now 1 week a year is obviously symbolic. Why do they do it? Many reasons. 1, it brings dignity to work. 2, Somebody comes into the CEO, says, I cannot do this. He says, what are you talking? I just did it last week. They're in touch with the grassroots. And 3, by example, the CEO is saying, I will never ask you to do something which I will not do myself. Look at the culture they have created. That's the culture we are talking. Marriott Hotels. Marriott, the owner himself, someplace, somewhere or the other, he is working every month as a bellboy, check-in clerk or somewhere. I'll share with you a story. One time, Marriott was in the lobby. They hired a trainee who was behind the counter. They were chatting. All of a sudden, a customer walked in. The trainee got confused. Should I continue to talk to Marriott, who's my employer, or should I address the customer? He continued talking to Marriott. Guess what happened? He wasn't fired. Bill Marriott said, young man, I can wait, but the customer cannot wait. And then he said something. Do you realize who pays your salary?
The customer.
I only sign the check. This guy pays your salary. You better look after him first. Not only your salary, he pays my salary too. You better look after him first. Now you see these cultures, look at the culture they have created. Now these things you will only find in organizations that are not ego-driven. Organizations that are ego-driven, slightest thing becomes an insult issue, slightest thing becomes a prestige issue. You will never see this kind of behavior in those organizations. And that is where you want to change. And what's a country? Country is nothing else but a bigger organization. Do you realize that GE, their turnover, I believe, or cap is close to $400 billion. That's bigger than many countries in the world. That one company alone. So what's a country? A country is nothing else but a bigger organization. And that's it. So size doesn't matter. It is really your behavior that decides professional or unprofessional behavior.
And speaking about size and leadership, as you already know, Mauritius is a small island with no natural resources, and yet Mauritius has attained good ratings internationally. What is your personal assessment about the economic progress and good in terms of good governance as well in Mauritius?
I personally feel I love Mauritius. I like it. It's beautifully located, very strategically located. You got so much natural beauty, it's unbelievable. Absolutely. You got the water. This country has the potential of being Singapore and Switzerland of this region. Now, I said it has the potential. Well, the potential is, how do you convert the potential into reality? That's important. Now, look, ratings are wonderful and nice. Eventually, people need to look at, are professionals coming into the country, or are people leaving the country and getting out of the country? Many things determine the quality of life. It is really, we have an office in Singapore. We opened an office there, I think about 16 years ago. And I tell you one thing, many times people ask, why do you open an office in Singapore? I said, if there's any place which is called heaven on earth, it's Singapore. Why? Quality of life is phenomenal. Crime is almost non-existent. Almost non-existent. There is no dirt, there is no drugs, there is no pornography, everything works, the government works. I went to the CPF, which is the Provident Fund Department. I needed some information. Without exaggeration, it took me 30 seconds. I was in and out dealing with the government. Hear this. When I set up my office in Singapore, it took me 22 minutes. 22 minutes to set up my office 16 years ago, which is 90 seconds to get my driver's license, 9.5 minutes to get my telephone hookup, 11.5 minutes to get my electrical hookup. I was ready to do business in 22 minutes. No wonder that country is shooting so much. Now this is what tells us, when I say heaven on earth, it has, in my opinion, one of the best education systems now, because they have changed quite a bit. 2, medical care in that country is wonderful. In fact, it's become the hub of medical care now. And connectivity is phenomenal. Quality of life is phenomenal. Tell me, and what else does a person need in life? What else does a person need? And that is what really, but it is done by one person. Who's that one person? Lee Kuan Yew. One person changed the country. Do you realize that they got independence in 1965? Yes. By the way, it's 1/3 size of Mauritius. 1/3 the size of Mauritius, and there are 5 million people living on that island. I'm not sure if there are 5 million people living in Mauritius.
Only 1.2.
So there you are, 1.2. Yeah. So there's 5 million people living there. Per square inch is pretty heavily populated. And that country, last year, the growth rate was 15, 16%. That's not bad. That is pretty good.
Very good, yeah. But do you think Mauritius has the potential to become like Singapore?
Of course. It has tremendous potential and a lot more. But the question is, are they actually realizing the potential? In my opinion, I don't think so. They need a long way to go. They have a long way to go.
And what's the way to go forward?
The way is really they need to get serious in terms of getting down to business, infrastructure. Look at this. Look at countries like Israel. You cannot build a home in that country without solar power. Imagine. They're surrounded all over by people who are not too conducive to them, but you cannot build a home. This is the law. You cannot build a home there without solar power. Well, look at the solar power that's available here. Have we harnessed it? 2, look at the wind power that we've got here. Have we harnessed it? Look at the infrastructure. Look at the roads. Look at everything. It's unbelievable. I mean, tell me, with this kind of a scenario, that beauty that is there in Mauritius, how many tourists do we get? 1 million a year. Yes. Singapore gets 1 million a month. Singapore gets 1 million a month. How much can you walk on an island of 26 miles? That's all Singapore is. But you see, again, the most important thing is to bring in, people have to get serious, they get rid of bureaucracy, and it eventually comes down to patriotic feeling. I'll tell you what, it does come down to patriotic feeling. Now, look at the success story in the last century of Japanese, Germany, South Korea, China now. Look at this, Taiwan in between. It really, if you look at Japanese, what was the reason for their success? It was not JIT, it was not quality circles, it was not Kaizen. It was the patriotic feeling, which brought all these things in. You know what? To them, quality product responsible behavior is considered patriotic. Poor quality irresponsible behavior is considered unpatriotic. That's it. Now, you see, pride in the country does not mean that my country is better than yours. That's a very narrow meaning. It means anything made in Japan carries the respect and dignity of every citizen, does it not? Absolutely true. And Japanese are very clear. To them, country comes first and company comes second. And they go a step further. If you have no country, where are your children going to be? Crucial. No wonder that country comes back.
And do you have, to end, do you have any special message for the young generation, the Mauritian people who are listening to us?
My one message is, invariably talk to people. And you know what the question is? There's so much of competition. How do you compete in today's world? My answer is, never in the history of mankind has it been so easy to succeed in life the way it is today. Regardless of your profession, we have no competition. When I said that at my seminar, one person asked me, how come? So I asked him one question. How many people do you know walking off the street who are willing to do a little bit more than what they get paid for? Hardly any. I repeat, how many people do you know walking off the street who are willing to do a little bit more than what you get paid for? Hardly any. Most people don't even want to do what they get paid for. And there's a second big category of people who only want to do what they can get by with. And there's a very small fraction of people who are willing to do a little bit more than what they get paid for. And I asked them, and I asked the viewers, if you fall into that category, I don't care what your profession is, tell me where's your competition.
True.
See, today you cannot find a good attorney, by the way. You cannot even find a good accountant. You can't find a good plumber, you can't find a good carpenter. Question is, are you willing to do a little bit more than what you get paid for? You go back, Maya, and check out the life histories of any successful person or any successful organization who have succeeded in life and then sustained success and then maintained goodwill. I repeat, who have succeeded and to sustain success